The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and/or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all. Oh, yeah. IndySiders back in the house. Yeah. Too sweet. All right. Harry Broadhurst, Big Sexy, the Heartbreak Kid, Mark Radulich. Kid. We are back. We're going to be talking AEW Revolution, baby.
Yeah, not very indie of us, but hey, yeah. We needed something for the schedule.
It's all right. We're going to be talking, AEW Revolution. We're going to talk a little bit of Elimination Chamber, see how the WrestleMania card's shaping up. But, Harry, we are the IndySiders, and you have Indie Insight. So what is the indie news that your Indie Insight will share us on this IndySiders podcast? You IndySider, you.
All right, so I am very IndySider-if.
Yeah.
Anyway, if there's anything I've learned in my life. All right. So we've been kind of talking about how the new administration in World Wrestling Entertainment is more adept towards working with independent companies.
Yes, sir.
And I think we have two very, very clear and obvious examples of that coming out this week with one person in particular.
What's that, Harry Broadhurst?
Did you see that Natalya was announced for Bloodsport?
No, actually, I didn't. I think, didn't we talk about last podcast, about how there was somebody the WWE sent over to Bloodsport? So
Shayna.
Shayna Baszler. And they sent her, it wasn't just she did it of her own volition. So that this is the sort of thing that's been more or less in the works for a while.
Well, we also saw the Creed brothers at a previous edition of Bloodsport as well.
Right.
But not only is Natalya working GCW's Bloodsport, she's also working for the NWA at Crockett Cup.
Good for her. I feel like I have a strong sense of what's going to happen in the near future. Royal Rumble 2026, number 30, Elton John. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road.
Effie will never be a WWE employee, ever.
He doesn't have to be an employee. He can come and do the Royal Rumble, get himself eliminated, and that'll be that.
You know who the better chance of showing up out of the GCW crew is? You got a better chance of Manser showing up on a WWE broadcast. And can I just say, I would fucking love that.
That would be fantastic.
I poke.
Yes. But I'm still going to keep, I'm going to keep pushing for this. I want to see Effie. Like, I don't even need to have him do like a full run or anything like that. Just come out, pay for the use of the song once, let him wow the crowd. He gets in there, blows everyone a kiss, and then like Braun Strowman or somebody just knocks the fuck out of him.
Only after somebody goes under the rainbow.
Yes.
The leg DDT in the corner is actually kind of a cool move. I got to give him that much.
Hey, listen. I will always give it up to Effie. You know how much I love him.
3 years of doing this have taught me nothing if not that.
Sir. All right. Anything else going on in the world, or do you want to get into some quick Elimination Chamber?
There was one other thing that I did want to discuss kind of here. TNA is apparently running WrestleMania week.
What are they running?
It's called Unbreakable.
Huh.
The 20th anniversary of that particular show title, which is arguably the most infamous match in TNA history. Man, if ever a retro watch for us to do on this show.
Mm-hmm. Is the entire Unbreakable card?
The Unbreakable 2005 show with arguably TNA's best match ever.
Which is what?
Joe, Daniels, and AJ in the triple threat for the X Division
Oh
title.
yeah. For me, TNA kind of topped out with Joe versus Angle in the cage. I still love that match. It's
My
one
buddy,
of my top 10.
my buddy Jason was live at that. That's from Lockdown in St. Louis.
Yeah, and I feel like that was the height of TNA. Like TNA peaked with Joe versus Angle.
So I'll be honest. I was really heavily invested in TNA until Hogan and Bischoff showed up, and then I stopped being invested in TNA because
everybody else.
I saw the writing on the wall when people like Brian fucking Knobs showed up and got television time.
Was Brian
Fuck
Knobs
that motherfucker.
Was Brian Knobs like what, 50 at the time?
Him and Jerry both probably. Although I will say I am glad to hear that he is doing better after having been hospitalized this week. I may not like him as a wrestler, but I respect him as a person, even if he is kind of a douche. Get well soon, Brian.
We don't wish death on people here at the IndySiders.
Yet. Give us time.
I was going to say that's more of a damn you Hollywood thing. All right. 2 purrs in less than 8 minutes. So let's get into Elimination Chamber. Yeah. So the Elimination Chamber. I want to talk about the women's one real quick. Because I kind of want to. This is why I don't want to do like a full recap, because there's some stuff I want to talk about, but then I want to deal with Raw the next night. What I'm able to get from it. So explain to me this whole Jade Cargill attack Naomi thing and Bianca Belair in her most dramatic performance anywhere, having just an outright conniption fit. So I know Bianca and Jade Cargill were tag team partners at one point. What's with the black on black crime, Harry Broadhurst?
Jesus.
Look, if Rampage Jackson can say it, I can say it.
Yeah, you notice the difference in the melanin in the two people?
Not even a little bit.
Anyways, so yes, Cargill and Bianca Belair were tag team champions. Bianca had heat backstage, needed a vacation, wanted to take time off, was injured, depending on what story you believe. Sure. So they wrote her off on SmackDown with her being attacked and laid out backstage, smashed through a car style.
Okay, this was yet another mystery thing where it turns out it's Fatu because he did it for the Rock, brother?
I did it for the Rock.
I did it for the Rock, brother.
But, I mean, in fairness, Naomi is related to Rikishi, so I guess kind of.
Okay, at the time, though, they didn't know it was Naomi, if I remember.
Correct.
Right, okay.
She is Rikishi's daughter-in-law.
Right. Okay.
She also did it for the Rock, ironically enough.
Everyone does it for the Rock. Okay. Your camera, like, I was gonna say, your camera like froze really bad. So not only whatever it was,
anyways,
it
but
was in fucking slow motion.
Even better. I don't know why it froze, but whatever.
Keep it going, pal. So explain to me what happens next in this story.
So on SmackDown, they do the big reveal that Naomi did it, and she says that she did it for Bianca because Jade was holding Bianca back. Which, I mean, probably not wrong.
Up Bianca Belair because
Jade was... Naomi beat up Jade, attacked Jade backstage because she was holding Bianca back.
Gotcha.
That's when Jade came out and attacked Naomi again on SmackDown while Bianca walked away from the situation. But Jade and Bianca never physically interacted, and I think that there's going to be an eventual plot twist here that Bianca was in on it, and she's using, and her and Naomi are doing this to get Jade out of the title picture, as well as to help Bianca refocus on the singles run as well.
Well, Bianca won the Elimination Chamber. So she and I believe she was going to fight the winner of Io Sky, good old garbage lady, and Rhea Ripley.
Okay. Clarification, she does trash can moonsaults. He doesn't actually think she's trash.
Right. So, Oscar the Jap, she's supposed to wrestle Rhea Ripley on Raw. She ended up winning.
Yes.
So are they doing just Io Sky?
It does not appear so.
Or what? Or
it does not appear so. It's looking like a triple threat.
All right. So are they going to do Naomi versus Jade at some point that weekend, or what?
I would have to think that that's probably going to be one of the Saturday matches, but it has not been officially confirmed as of yet.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like two triple threats, the other one being Seth Rollins, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns, is a little too much.
Well,
I
you can put them
I would
on.
almost like to see it be Io, Bianca, Jade, and Naomi in a fatal four way.
But where does that leave Rhea?
Doing something else.
I mean, there was rumor going around for a while that Rhea was going to wrestle Dominic Mysterio at Mania, but that ended up obviously not happening.
You know what? I mean, have Stephanie Vader, who just won both, her second title at NXT.
That's
You
never
know,
not going to make me laugh.
I would put my vote for Rhea Ripley versus Stephanie Vader at WrestleMania, or do it on NXT, or do it at NXT. Why does she? She's kind of hit. Rhea Ripley has sort of hit that place of she's a made girl. Doesn't really matter what she does anymore.
Agreed.
She'll always be popular. I think I even heard rumors that, she's starting to eye greener pastures. Maybe go to Hollywood Land, make a movie or two. Maybe she could be the next Snow White. Not like this one's going to do any good.
Can't say that I saw the trailer. I can't say I paid it any attention.
Harry, there's so much. People who follow Damn You Hollywood or follow the movie industry know exactly what I'm talking about and got a smirk out of that. This Snow White movie is looking to be the most epic bomb in the history of Disney, and that's saying something.
So the general belief is it's going to be Stephanie Vaquer versus Jada Parker at Stand and Deliver. Because Jada kind of got the Mickey James seal of approval last night on NXT at 2 nights ago. Last night.
I say we do double duty. I say Stephanie Vader versus Jada Pinkett, and then have her come out on one of the nights of WrestleMania and do yeah, let's get my wife's name out your damn mouth.
I thought you'd appreciate that reference.
And do Rhea Ripley. That'd be fun.
I don't co-sign the Rhea idea, but so the only thing that I'm thinking when it comes to the triple threat match, I agree with you that 2 triple threats is too much if WrestleMania wasn't 2 nights. I think doing 1 triple threat on each night makes that kind of allowable. And I think that the Punk Roman Rollins triple threat, if it does end up happening, will be on night 1, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it before the number 1 contendership to the championship currently held by Cody Rhodes.
Here's the other thing I would suggest to you. I think between now and WrestleMania, Rhea and Io have a rematch, and something happens to cause Rhea to get the title back. Yeah. What happens? Well, hang on. Let me think this through, because where I was going with this, where I want the math to end up is Ric Flair versus Hogan at WrestleMania 8. Also, where I want the math to end up is Jade versus Bianca. I think that's the match. Honestly, I love Io Sky, whether she's in a trash can or not. Rhea Ripley, I just talked about her. I think a match America wants, I think a match America needs. The skibbity toilet of wrestling right now is Jade Cargill versus... That's the second night. That's the second night this week I've made a skibbity toilet reference, like a decade too late, I think it is.
I'm hoping it was the exact same response the last time you made that reference.
It was. Jade Cargill versus Bianca Belair is where it's at. And if you wanted to do Jade versus Naomi versus Bianca, that I could get behind.
I think that Jade versus Naomi leads to Jade versus Bianca. I just think that Jade versus Naomi leads to Jade versus Bianca later in the year, because remember, SummerSlam is 2 nights this year for the first time ever.
True, and they need more matches, I suppose. You convinced me that maybe we save Jade versus Bianca for SummerSlam, but then but now I'm convinced that Bianca is going to end up winning the title at WrestleMania.
I don't disagree with you.
All right. Anyway, what'd you think of the Elimination Chamber, all in all?
The men's Elimination Chamber, obviously, I thought it was very well scripted in terms of...
Hang on, let's finish with the women's.
Oh, the women's one first? Okay.
Yeah.
For her first actual match other than the short qualifying match that she had on SmackDown a couple of weeks ago, for her first actual match in like 2 years, Alexa looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Liv, I think, has been carrying the women's division basically for the better part of the last year.
Yeah, her facial expression
character-wise, in-ring.
Her facial expression when Jade Cargill came down was pretty good.
I didn't do it.
Yeah. That was good stuff.
Let's see here. Obviously, Bianca ended up winning the match.
Yeah.
Who else was? Oh, Roxanne. We like to talk about Roxanne here. I thought Roxanne had a really good performance before getting taken out by Alexa.
Yeah.
I do think that we did set up another WrestleMania match inside of the chamber as well, though. With Liv eliminating Alexa.
Mm-hmm.
I think we set up Liv and Raquel versus Alexa and Nikki for the women's tag team titles at Mania.
That's fair. What do you think Bayley's going to end up doing that weekend then?
I honestly don't have a clue, and it kind of worries me. Maybe you put Bayley into some kind of women's gauntlet match where you crown a number one contender or something.
Either that or send her back down to NXT. Maybe it's her and Stephanie Vader.
I mean, there's got to be a way to get the rest of the women on the card there. Maybe she's in like the Mae Young. I still think it's Jada.
Right. Anyway, I thought it was okay. I don't remember there. I feel like we've kind of hit a point now with the women's division where they're more or less pretty competent. I was listening to Jim Cornette, I think, review it. He didn't seem as negative as he normally is, which I think is a sign that the wrestling there was at least halfway decent. I mean, you discard all of his general lack of enthusiasm for this kind of match in the first place, especially with women. Because his whole argument basically is, if the women are doing it first, what's left for the men to do? Okay, it's a day that ends in Y with Jim Cornette, which is fine. I value his opinion, but I've heard this before. That being said, he didn't seem to be too down on the actual wrestling that was going on in there. And I think we've hit a base level of competency with the women's division that has never been seen before. Because
I agree.
You agree with me, good. It used to be there was 3 or 4
really good work, and then everybody else was just kind of there as eye candy.
Or klutzes, like people tripping over their own dick. And I didn't see a lot of that. Between that and NXT Vengeance Day, I'm actually, I'm looking at a women's division that for the first time kind of looks like the average male wrestler.
I will say this much for Vengeance Day. For Roadblock last night. I will say this much. I did think Jordan and Roxy were off. I don't think that match was as good as other people were saying it is.
Okay. I didn't see it. I was working. All right. Now let's talk about the men's. Oh, the men. Yeah.
Well, we'll save the big story for the end of this conversation, obviously.
Yeah.
Because
Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest, Logan Paul, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, and then John Cena. Let's see. Drew McIntyre was eliminated by Damian Priest.
Mat-based crucifix pin.
Damian Priest was eliminated by Logan Paul.
Frog splash off the pod.
CM Punk eliminated Logan Paul and Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, CM Punk. Fight forever, pals.
So I'm probably in the vocal minority here. I did not like the cage match.
Okay, you didn't like the Elimination Chamber, huh?
No, the cage match on Raw. I thought the Elimination Chamber match was fantastic. I love the story the men's Elimination Chamber match told. I didn't care for the cage match on Raw. I thought it was very you hit me, I hit you, you hit me, I hit you. There was a little bit of a story tied in with the verbiage in between there, but my problem is selling is a lost art in pro wrestling, and there was like none of it inside of that cage match.
Yeah, it's always been my problem with modern wrestling is, in any other world, these people would be dead.
Yeah, and never is it more noticeable than in some of the matches that happened, a couple of the matches that happened on Raw, and especially a couple of the matches that we'll talk about a little bit later tonight.
Yeah. But all in all, I liked the men's Elimination Chamber. I think there were some fun spots in it, some bits. It really did feel like for the first time in a while that it was anyone's. I mean, I know we talked about the direction it was probably going to go in. I think we had talked about when we previewed it, it was either going to be Punk or Cena, but it still felt to me when I turned my logic brain off that it was anyone's match. Like there was nobody in there that I could make a hard argument. There's no way you're winning. You're just here to get beaten up.
And the other thing, too, that I thought was really cool was the fact that you could weave so many different stories together throughout the course of that match as well, and all of them could eventually make sense. Drew and Damian got their WrestleMania match set up through the chamber. Logan Paul furthered his situation with CM Punk, which I think they do come back to that down the road with him and Punk. You obviously further Punk and Rollins by Rollins getting involved in Punk's elimination after Punk pinned him to knock him out of the Elimination Chamber match. And then obviously the big story coming out of Elimination Chamber is who won and what happened after they won.
Yeah. So John Cena wins, and then yes, LOL. Then Cody comes down. And they warm embrace and kisses, just squeeze each other's butts. It was just romantic and lovely. And then out comes the final boss, The Rock.
Somewhere Effie smiles.
Mr. TKO. And he came out. I just want to make mention of this. I really don't know what a Travis Scott is, but I remember my son vaguely talking about him last year. He was doing some sort of bit for my father, and he was just like, and what if you're Travis Scott? And I'm like, no, and I don't know what you're talking about. So when the guy came out, and I'm like, why does that name sound familiar? And I looked at my son, and I'm like, didn't you babble about him not that long ago? And he had forgotten that he'd done the bit. So I found the TikTok that I recorded of him. And he was like, oh yeah, I did talk about this. I don't know. I still to this day don't know what a Travis Scott is. He could have been a homeless guy that they picked up and threw a belt on, for all I knew. But
to be fair, Cody probably thinks he is a homeless man with the way that he punched him.
Yeah, seriously. Anyway, The Rock came down. He told Cody, "I have come for your soul because I am the devil." I mean, have you seen my movies? And Cody told
the man takes one chokeslam from the Undertaker and starts trying to take people's souls. Rude.
So Cody, because we are no longer in the PG era, told Rock to go fuck himself. And at which point John Cena came and gave Cody a hug again. He's just like, I just love the word fuck. Let me hug you. And Cody goes, oh, good. I love hugs. And then John Cena looked at The Rock, and The Rock looked at John Cena, and John Cena looked back at The Rock, and The Rock said, at which point John, for the first time in 1,000 years, as our grandfathers foretold, as was written in the bones and in the skies above, John Cena finally, Chris Bailey turned heel. And I will only say this, and I don't mean to sound like the kind of fan that is never satisfied with anything, but a little too late. I mean, there was a point at which if you turned John Cena heel, people would have been like, oh my God, I would have thrown babies and batteries at him from the stands. I am so upset by this sort of thing. I'm
just imagine somebody hucking a kid.
Palm it like a basketball. But why? Yeah. And then, first of all, John Cena, I get it. Vince is gone. The ding dong, the witch is dead. I get it. It's his final tour. So if you were ever going to do it, now is the time. I get it. Who the fuck else for Cody? But again, it's a little spoiled milk for me. It's a little, and then like the crowd didn't really react the way that you wanted them to. Like when and I hate to compare it to this because it's like the greatest heel turn in the history of pro wrestling. But when Hogan dropped a leg on Savage, there was palpable anger in the crowd. Now, granted, it was a different time and a different crowd, but still. There was no way you could believe that Hogan would ever do such a thing. And so when he did it, people reacted viscerally. Here, John Cena turns on Cody and turns heel, and now he's the hand of The Rock. And people were just like, oh, huh.
See, I think that there were different prevailing opinions about it from different sources online there, because
Mhm.
I've seen the full gamut of things, of like what you were saying, where it's far too late to, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And then obviously you get the Mark reactions that they use on the broadcast going forward, just in
Sure.
order to sell their narrative there. I like the idea behind the concept. I don't think it works if this truly is a retirement tour, because people are going to cheer him for all of his contributions to wrestling over the years anyways.
Here's the thing. A different version of what I'm talking about. When the NWO showed up in WWE, they knew that the NWO was too cool for school. They knew the NWO had its built-in fans of everything the NWO does is cool, and Hall and Nash are cool, and it's fun to cheer. It's fun to cheer the bad guys. That's the kind of world we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
And back in 2002, 2002, yeah,
February of 2002.
So they had to do stuff with the NWO to really get people to turn on them and to really embrace them as true bad guys. So they ran The Rock over with a car. The NWO at that point was trying to murder The Rock. So, like, all right, you're bad guys, we get it. What the fuck?
Hit him while you. So I think that the insinuation that Cena sold out to the Rock is where they're kind of going to lay their heads here. The fact that the man who always stayed behind the phrases of hustle, loyalty, and respect finally turncoated on those beliefs. Has he
said on Raw yet why he turned to the dark side?
He hasn't been on Raw since it's happened.
Okay, so we still don't know what. Well, that's a problem, because the next thing he should have come out and told the fans to go fuck themselves. But again.
So I will give you this as a response to that. The post-show press conference that they do.
Yeah.
Cena walked into the press conference, sat down, picked up the microphone to start to answer questions, dropped the microphone and walked out. I think that was the perfect thing for him to do at the press conference, because you can keep him from kind of man behind the curtaining the whole thing there with the questions that they asked.
But again, you have to come out. Okay, so here's probably the best example of this. Go ahead, say what you're going to say. But
his first appearance on Raw will be this coming Monday after we record this show, since his last appearance at Chamber.
Okay, so maybe we'll get the explanation then. But I feel like you missed an
opportunity
to do a story beat. But whatever. When The Rock joined the Nation and he did the "How dare you, die Rocky die, I'm a person," like, that was great. And and it was close enough to the actual heel turn that the follow-up made sense. When Hogan did his shit in the ring, like the NWO beat Savage, Luger, and Sting, and Hogan right then and there did a whole thing about, for years I catered to you people and you fucking turned on me, so screw you too. Now I'm in it for me.
This trash in the ring is representative of what I think of each and every one of you.
Yeah, it was perfect. I would like to give them more credit than I'm about to, that they know where the story is going. They have a definitive middle and end. They aren't just winging it. They aren't throwing poop at the wall to see what sticks. On the other hand, there seems to be some missing basic elements of storytelling. But I'll see what the final product looks like before I make a final judgment. I just know that you don't want to let Cena's heel turn already wasn't all that strong. We can to not follow it up immediately with an explanation of why he's doing what he's doing. People lose interest, Harry. People just lose interest after a while. When you don't have, how's your game going?
Tied with 3.8 seconds left.
I can see why you're watching. So the Knicks are up on Portland 64-56. So that's how my game's going. Finally, they're pulling ahead. In any case, my final word on this, so we can move on. We're halfway through. Storytelling should follow a rhythm, and this is a little too slow.
I'm going to disagree. in that I think that in the age of wrestling that we live in now, with the fact that you have so much television that you're putting out, so much product that you're putting out over the course of the days and the weeks and stuff, and the fact that you have so many different bosses to cater to, you want to have content for your YouTube stuff, you want to have stuff for television, you want to have stuff for Netflix, you want to have stuff to be able to put on Instagram and TikTok and whatever in order to keep people invested in there. I think that
God knows that's the only way I keep in touch with the product now is through TikTok.
My point being is that I think the importance of being able to cater to all those different demands there allows you the ability to slow burn stories like this, especially when the match writes itself after having Cena sell his soul to The Rock for the match with Cody. Basically, Cena's taking the easy way out for a chance at 17, which is what Cody said in his promo on SmackDown.
Here's what I'll tell you. I am excited for Cody versus Cena. I think it's going to be good.
I agree.
Cena can still wrestle. Cody can wrestle. I think they can get a good match out of each other. I think they'll trust each other enough. I also are we still committed to the idea that John Cena wins this thing now that he's a heel?
No, I think Cody retains.
Okay.
But I think Cody retains, and then I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody else sell their soul to The Rock in order to get an opportunity at that title. Perhaps a certain person who has been talking about how he would never do that, even though he knows his time inside of wrestling is running short as well.
Who are you alluding to? Oh, CM Punk?
Punk.
Oof. That makes even less sense than John Cena, but whatever. I
will say this much, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
I would be more concerned about this if we were still under the old regime.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to think that the current regime between Hunter, Sean, Nick Khan, and the other creatives that are currently working there, Road Dogg included in that conversation, have proven with their track record over the last 2 years that usually they have a beginning, a middle, and an end decided, and we just have to be patient getting there. Look at what they did with the Bloodline story over the course of the last year.
You know what would be perfect for selling out to The Rock? Just hear me out on this. What if
Effie?
Not just Effie, fucker, but Effie comes out and not only does he sell out his soul, but he turns straight for The Rock. What if evil?
The views and opinions of Mark Radulich.
Evil straight Effie works for The Rock, and he's just taking bitches out. And then later on, we can bring what's his husband's name again? Paro. We can bring Paro in, and Paro's like, "Please come back to me, Effie."
That is not Effie's husband.
No, you're right. Shit, I'm thinking
Paro and Odin are married.
Yeah. I confuse them. It doesn't matter. Still, Paro. But we'll just write an angle about it. Paro is Effie's husband in this whole thing. Why would you do this, Effie? And then Odin comes in like, wait a minute, what about me? And it's, we have just...
What about Raven?
Yes. Odin's like, what about me? What about Odin? Oh, my God. And then it all leads to Odin versus Paro versus Effie with Rock as a special main event. And they all gang up on The Rock. Just beat him to death.
It's the second time I'm face palming in this episode.
I'm going for 5. All right.
You're at 2.
So now we have
game just went to overtime, by the way. So
you poor bastard.
A little bit. I'm feeling it right now.
So right now, WrestleMania is looking like Cody versus John.
Confirmed.
Time, which is my kid's new favorite thing. We were annoying my girlfriend with this, just yelling, running around. You think I'm bad about Effie. Now my whole thing with me and my kids is it's always Tiffy time. My son wants to get several T-shirts that he can change out of all throughout WrestleMania weekend. And so one of the T-shirts he wants now is an It's Tiffy Time T-shirt. I told him I would buy him one.
You got to find yourself a sale on shop.com.
There you go. All right. Then we also have Gunther versus Jey Uso, which we talked about already. And then Io Sky versus Bianca Belair, at least for the time being. It is what it is. All right. AEW Revolution is why we're here tonight. It took
Did you watch the pre-show?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing from soup to nuts.
Okay.
It took place at the Crypto.com Arena, which sounds like a parody, in Los Angeles, California, home of the Lakers. On
Boo.
March 9th, 2025. Oh, don't boo the Lakers. They lost. They had their 8 game winning streak now that they got Ozempic Doncic to the fucking Celtics, and that broke my heart. They didn't score. They barely scored a single basket in the third quarter of that game. I almost died.
Didn't LeBron get hurt too?
Yes, that was that whole game was fucked. All right. So we started off-ish, at least the Wikipedia tells us, with Commander and Hologram defeating Lee Johnson and Blake Christian. 9:55. What'd you think of this one?
I like Blake Christian, but this felt like an ROH match on an AEW pre-show.
I was gonna go with it felt like a GCW match, just an average GCW.
I mean,
match.
Blake Christian is a former GCW heavyweight champion, so
that is why I was having those vibes.
The problem with Lee Johnson is Lee Johnson hasn't mattered since Cody left the company.
We have an 8-man tag. How the Undisputed Attitude have fallen. Now they're rocking the pre-show.
You know what? I was talking to one of my friends about this, and I want to get your opinion. How badly are Cole, Strong, and O'Reilly regretting leaving NXT now that the people in charge of NXT are the people that are in charge of NXT?
Yeah, well, I mean,
because
you can't tell the future. If I did, I'd do a lot better at betting. And they had no idea that the whole thing with Vince was going to happen. Vince acted like he was never going to leave that company, that he was going to live forever. He like
there are those of us who thought he was.
Well, it's so funny because, like, if you follow the kind of science blogs and stuff I follow on Facebook, like we are within a few years away from being able to live forever for one reason or another. Downloading consciousness and whatnot, and there's all kinds of technology and things to extend life or prolong it interminably. Vince McMahon would have been the first. And like if there was even an inkling that he could have extended his life, it would have been like, Vince, this is your cyborg robot that we're gonna put your brain in and you're gonna live forever. He'd have been like, cut me open with a spoon, like whatever. He would just whatever, pal.
That's good shit.
Yeah. Like, we're gonna put you under anesthesia now. Fuck the anesthesia. Just rip my fucking head open and shove it up the robot's ass. Anyway, what do you think about this, Effie? It doesn't matter. Listen, I'm pretty sure
the head in the robot is one of the Janelle Grant claims, but too far.
No, not even a little bit. My point is, no one knew Vince McMahon was eventually going to leave the company, and everyone was kind of running from the company because of him.
And it was pretty well established that Vince was not a fan of Adam Cole.
Yeah, so they made the best decision they could with the information that they had, and then the world changed, as it often does. So I don't blame them, and I don't think they're regretting it that much. I mean, like, again, who knew?
I do think that if the opportunity arises, that all three of them will return to the fold up in New York and or Florida.
Here's what I'll tell you. I mean, maybe, but don't you think at this point, with where they are in AEW right now,
what's the point?
Between age, injury, and the fact that they are completely devalued, why would they take them back?
What I was just saying there is, what's the point? Like, obviously hindsight is 2020. But if it wasn't there, you would have to think that Cole, Strong, and O'Reilly are definitely regretting their decisions. Cole got off to a hot start in AEW, but then after everything hit the skids with him and Britt, it seemed like his wrestling career, and it's really when he got injured jumping off of the stage at that episode of Dynamite.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you this is the hard truth, and I don't mean to be mean, but I got to be me. What use do any of them have anymore in the WWE? Kyle O'Reilly is ugly, and there are about a dozen guys that could replace him. Adam Cole is smaller than the average WWE wrestler, and what's his face? Roddy is smaller than he is. Like they at this point, their sell-by date has expired. They are devalued, and whatever use they would have had on the roster there's already somebody in their place, or there's other people. I mean, like, there are younger guys in AEW.
That can do
Ricky
what they
Saints,
do at this point.
yeah, like they have like Ricky Saints now, and whoever else is gonna jump ship. Like, they don't need the Undisputed Attitude guys, and they don't bring any value with them. So, like, and don't get me wrong, I love the Undisputed Attitude. They were in NXT at a time that NXT was probably my favorite promotion. I had an Undisputed Attitude T-shirt, but I also liked He-Man when I was a kid. Time passes, things change.
I think that the Undisputed Era at the time managed to catch lightning in a bottle in NXT. And the problem is that lightning has since faded, and now they are of the point where they're so low card in AEW that I kind of have a hard time not agreeing with you in that it's hard to see what kind of value they would bring coming back to NXT. Hopefully they can get reheated, because obviously we've seen it happen where people in AEW have gone through cold spells and then been reheated to the point that they're marquee attractions once again. I look at a guy like Swerve Strickland for that. Because for a while there, Swerve Strickland was doing jack and shit. And now Swerve is one of the hottest acts in the company again.
Yeah, he was. He's got a one-way ticket to the AEW title, doesn't he?
We'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Yes, we certainly will. All right. Anyway,
sorry for hitting the microphone, folks.
Daniel Garcia and the Undisputed Kingdom defeated Shane Taylor Promotions, 9 minutes 10 seconds. That's fine. I mean, not particularly memorable, but considering what else is going to happen on this card, that's that's really not a knock against it. It is what it is. I thought it was a perfect 10-minute 8-man tag.
Yeah, it's a 10-minute tag match in order to get the crowd heated up during the pre-show, to get them ready for what they're going to see later. The only thing that it did do is it furthered the situation between Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia, which I did like, because I thought those two had a really good singles match on Collision a couple of weeks back that got interrupted by STP, Carly Bravo and Sean Dean, specifically causing the no contest. And I wouldn't be surprised if at Dynasty we see Garcia defending against the title against whatever mid-card title is Garcia holds. I forget which one it is.
I like Daniel Garcia. He was, as much as I'm a fan of Adam Cole, baby. I think my favorite part of this match was anytime Daniel Garcia shook his hips. That was fun stuff.
Did you see Mina doing Daniel Garcia's dance?
Yes.
Good God.
All right. Next one. Big Boom AJ and the
not the word I would have used.
Big Boom AJ and the conglomeration of Orange Cassidy and Mark Briscoe with Big Justice and the Rizzler defeated Johnny TV, MXM collection of Mansoor and Mason Madden with Taya Valkyrie. A couple of things about this. I didn't realize that Johnny TV was Johnny Morrison. I didn't realize that was Taya Valkyrie. What the hell happened to her? She went from looking hot, looking like fucking Gwen Stefani on crack. What happened to this poor woman?
She had a kid.
Fine. Make me sound like an asshole. And then
not that hard.
That's a short trip. And fucking Orange Cassidy and Big Boom AJ walk out with 2 children.
Okay, so let's
what happened? First of all, I'm watching this with my girlfriend who doesn't really watch wrestling, and she was okay.
It's a hard match to explain.
I looked. Well, I looked at her and I looked at that and I looked at her and I looked at that and I looked back at her again and I said, "I'm sorry. I have no explanation for this. This has no defense. It is what it is."
It was a comedy match. That's all it was. It was a ha-ha. It was a ha-ha.
How many more times does Jim Cornette have to complain about Kenny Omega kicking a kid before we have to stop doing kids in pro wrestling?
However soon it is, can't be soon enough to get rid of Justice and Rizzler, because I can't stand those 2 snot-nosed little brats.
Oh my God! Where did this come from, and why did they do this in 50 words?
TikTok, unfortunately.
Oh, well then it's fine. Anyway,
yeah. Now who's selling out?
All right, this is 12 minutes and 55 seconds of my life I want back. Now we get to the meat of the matter.
Real quick, yes. Just one thing I will say here. I want more for MXM. because I think Mason Madden and Mansoor have that gimmick on lock, and they are fantastic in it. And they're both.
Mason Madden has a very unique look to him. Like he
Let's
has a. Go ahead.
You know who that is, right? That's the former Mace from Retribution.
Okay. He has an interesting face.
It's definitely a unique look, especially with the makeup that he wears.
Yeah, I'm interested in him. I want to see what I hope he does better things in comedy matches because he's got a great physique and an interesting face. And I'm like, okay, you would make a fun heel. Like maybe we don't need to give you 100 arm pads or anything and knee pads, but I do think he has kind of that, Ahmed Johnson ish body shape to him, but with a really interesting face, and it seems like he can actually wrestle. I'm excited for what they might do with him, and I'd like to see more of that. And that was about the only thing. What are you doing? Okay, what am I looking at?
It's a Mace action figure, Mason Madden.
I hate the fact that people feel like it's okay to bring props on my shows.
Deal with it.
Yeah, I have a guy who, whenever he comes on, he has to show us all the DVDs he owns, and I'm like, please stop. This is podcast death. Anyway, speaking of podcast death, Hangman Adam Page, cowboy shit, baby, defeated MJF by pinfall singles match. I love this match. This was 19 minutes 10 seconds. MJF consistently has some of the best matches on any given AEW card. Has for years, will continue to do so until he no longer wants to do AEW. These guys are magic in the ring together. This was one of the best pure matches on the card with a lot of gimmick. Despite the fact there's a lot of gimmickry on this card. I'm always sad when MJF doesn't win, but I think they put on a good enough wrestling match that it doesn't particularly matter.
I'm going to take it a step further from what you said. This was my favorite match on the entire show.
Really? With all the nonsense we're about to talk about, this was the high point, huh?
Because this was traditional classic pro wrestling.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
The psychology behind this match was fantastic with everything MJF did to avoid the buckshot lariat until finally Hangman wore him down enough to be able to hit it for the finish. To the selling and the tease of the count out with the tombstone on the chair there. Now, granted, tombstone on the chair, probably a death blow 5-10 years ago. Nowadays, near fall, but whatever. But we'll talk more about that in terms of ridiculous kickouts a little bit later on in the broadcast.
Is your 5 minutes of overtime up yet?
Nah, they're in an official review. Kansas is up by 2 with 27 seconds left.
Nice. And you're rooting for Kansas?
Yeah, rock chalk.
Nice. 77 all. Knicks Portland going into the fourth.
Come for the wrestling, stay for the basketball talk.
We used to have a basketball show on here, if you'll remember. All right.
Just real quick though, going back to the MJF Hangman match there, that is to me that is traditional pro wrestling. That is pro wrestling 101 right there. Storytelling, psychology, ring work, characters. They hit all four and they hit it fantastically.
I don't disagree. All right, Mercedes Moné versus good old, my mother used to call me this, Momo. Momo Watanabe for the AEW TBS Championship, 18 minutes and 30 seconds. Sasha Banks is an okay wrestler. What do you think make of this Momo?
That's a hot take.
I mean, klutzy as some, but she's fucking, 20 pounds. She's 20 pounds fucking soaking wet. She injured herself a lot.
My point for Mercedes there isn't the fact that it's ever been debated if she's a good wrestler or not. It's she's a despicable human being.
Okay,
but that
I don't know what she did. I don't know what she did to hurt you in a former life, but I don't know why you say that.
There's a whole lot of evidence that points to what I've said there. Look it up. Trust me, you'll find it. Anyways, the point being here is
I just don't know the story. And okay, so where does she rank in terms of shitty human being between like Charlotte Flair and what's the broad's name who I like to make fun of?
Tessa
Blanchard.
Closer to the Charlotte scale of it than the Tessa scale.
Okay, so
She's not a racist, at least that I'm aware of.
Tessa Blanchard's not a racist. She's just
Ask
colorful.
Ask La Rosa Negra her opinion of that.
It's colorful opinions is the whole issue here.
So back to the match though, trying to get this train back on tracks at some point. I thought the match was okay for what it was. The problem is I at absolutely no point bought Momo Watanabe winning this match, and I think that took away from the ability to.
I tried to ask you before. What is a Momo Watanabe?
She is the former Goddess of Stardom, which is their heavyweight championship. If I'm not mistaken, I think she was the one that took that belt from Julia. I could be wrong there.
Okay, moving on. I thought it was fine. They did something, and at some
the
point
match was there, but
yeah, my son looked at me, and he was asking me a question about a spot that they did, and he just sort of put his hands in his head in his hands, and he goes, "I hate pro wrestling." Shortly thereafter, he went to bed.
It's easy to feel that way sometimes.
I did not stop him. Next, we have Swerve Strickland with Prince Nana defeating Ricochet. Ricochet seems happy now that he gets to do all his flippity doos. He gets to have the matches he wants to have with nobody telling him knock it off. And Swerve Strickland looked appropriately main eventish here. He's now the number one contender for the AEW World Title. More on that later. 18 minutes 10 seconds. I thought these guys worked well together. What'd you think?
Good, not great, but that was kind of expected. I think they toned it down a little bit from what they're capable of, just to not take some of the shine off of matches to come a little bit later on in the night. But they still told a good story in the process, and you had the big payoff to Swerve getting the jacket back for Nana as well to kind of conclude their storyline over the course of the last couple of months too.
Let's move on to the next match, because I don't really have a whole lot to say there. Rainmaker! Okada defeated Brody King. Oh, this was big, meaty men slapping meat. 10 minutes, 55 seconds for one of the 87 titles in this federation.
It is an epidemic.
I will never get tired of the Okada clothesline. Rainmaker! There's nobody in my house right now, so I can scream this all I want without waking a child. Rainmaker!
Apologies to our listeners using headphones.
You know what's fun? Scream that in your girlfriend's face for no good reason.
How do you still have a girlfriend?
I'm charming.
Sure.
I love Okada, and this was a fun match. This was, you talked about like, MJF Hangman is what I like about pro wrestling. Close second is Brody King, for me at least. Brody King and Okada. This is what I remember from my youth. This is what I like. This was good stuff.
I think this suffered from the same thing the Mercedes Moné match did, in that at no point did I think that Brody King was a legitimate threat to take the Continental title off of Okada.
That's a fair assessment, but I can allow myself to get caught up in the work.
The problem that I have is, and you were talking about this too, is the oversaturation of championships in AEW make everything kind of being about titles rather than being about personal stories. This had like next to no story at all behind it. Okada beat Buddy Matthews, called Brody King a bitch, and then all of a sudden they're having a title match. Really?
I mean, I get your complaint there, and I think it's a legitimate one, but just think you're very much enmeshed in the world of pro wrestling. Stuff affects you differently than it does me. I haven't watched an episode of Dynamite in a few years now, so I went into this whole thing cold, which means I just accepted the match on face value, and on face value, it was exactly what I said it was, and I was entertained.
And that's fair. And I think that a lot of times that's probably not the worst way to view pro wrestling in general, is just kind of watching everything in a bubble, and that it happens in this moment as is for whatever reason that it's happening, and then you try to get invested in the story as it happens. I can understand the logic behind that.
It's like going to an indie show,
which we'll get back to.
Yeah. You go to an indie show, you don't necessarily know what all the storylines are. You just know that there's guys you like wrestling, and you watch them wrestle. The storyline is less important in those situations. That's kind of how I regarded AEW Revolution.
Similar to how things will be for me coming into our next broadcast with St. Louis Anarchy.
Very much so. All right. Next match was the White Syndicate of Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, who defeated the Outrunners of Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum. What the fuck?
I found myself asking myself that exact same question during the course of this match. I get the reason for it. Truth and Turbo sold a shit ton of merch, and this was a thank you to them for doing so. The problem is that nobody with any common sense whatsoever buys them as a threat.
Sold merch for who?
AEW shop. They were like the third leading merchandise sellers for 2024.
For what?
Their youngest men in pro wrestling shirt. I don't understand it either.
There are 100.
You are preaching to the choir. I don't get it either.
They look like the Rock and Roll Express, and I mean today.
Apologies to headphone listeners, but that legit popped me.
Good God.
I mean, you're not wrong either. That one dude is a dead-ass ringer for Ricky Morton. I've had the girlfriend watching wrestling with me since January. I had her come over to watch the Royal Rumble, and she watched the Chamber, and she was like, all right, I kind of get this. I understand why you like this. It's not really my thing, but I like spending time with you, so I get this. She watched this and that match in particular and looked at me, and she was like, what are we doing here? Like, and that is, I think, the true judge of like pro wrestling is when you bring a complete outsider to it. It either reels them in which case they're doing it right, or it has that reaction, in which case you're doing it wrong. I know that he's kind of persona non grata these days, unfortunately, but one of my favorite wrestlers of all time is Mike Quackenbush. Mm-hmm. And Mike Quackenbush famously said, to those who get it, no explanation is necessary. To those who don't, no explanation will do. Yeah,
my father used to say stuff like that, and he's got dementia. No, just kidding. He doesn't have dementia. Not yet, at least. Yeah. Anyway.
Working stiff, I see.
Always. All right. And now we get to our first murder match of the night. Timeless Tony Storm defeats Mariah May. Falls count anywhere. I generally don't care about like women's hardcore matches. Like, they don't bother me. Jim Cornette is significantly older than I am. So when he's like, I don't want to see women hurt themselves this way, I understand where he's coming from. There was a time where these things mattered. So I am sympathetic to Jim Cornette's point of view, as most people his age point of view of women should not mutilate themselves this way. But, I also cheered when I watched with my family the St. Patrick's Day Massacre, or whatever the fuck it was, where it was, I think it was Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, where they wrestled in the tax.
The match that became the blood and guts figures on ringside. Yeah. I remember it.
Yeah. I've seen plenty of that kind of thing. I've definitely seen women brutalize each other, but I've never necessarily gotten squeamish with any of it. And not that I got particularly squeamish here. This was the first time I've seen women get this fucked up on a mainstream wrestling card.
Tony tapped an absolute gusher, and I think that's what made it worse than what it was.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what I'm saying. Like, this was uncomfortable to watch. I think that's why I did the whole preamble about Jim Cornette, because like I kind of landed where he's already been, which is, I don't like to see women do this to each other.
So as somebody who watches deathmatch wrestling, it didn't bother me as much, just because I've seen people like Sawyer Wreck and Alley Cat in death matches and stuff. So I'm used to So I'm used to that more hardcore side of the business there.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I was concerned for both Mariah and Tony's physical well-being with the blade jobs there, just because of how, and especially in Tony's case, because whenever Tony seems to cut, Tony always catches a vein for some reason, and it's just pouring all over her face.
Yeah, it was AEW, sometimes to its credit and sometimes in this case to its detriment, gives the wrestlers way too much freedom.
I think that too many people bleed on these shows, and it ends up making everything not mean as much as it could.
Or you have to bleed nearly to death in order to mean anything at all, which is not good.
I agree. Like consider the problem as well of having this match so close to the Ospreay Fletcher cage match just a few matches later in the show, where both of them were busted wide open as well.
Yeah, it, like I said, now we're getting into the gross portion of the pay-per-view. Says the guy who watches death matches.
The old axiom that red equals green isn't the case if everybody's red.
That is correct. It's, well, you know, it's one of the reasons why when we did the first iteration of this, I didn't want to do too many deathmatch shows in a row, because it was like, this is all starting to watch. And this is part of the reason. I mean, granted, I haven't watched a lot of it because I've just been busy with life, but I think I would have naturally burnt out on whatever the one with the chains is, and you know, some of the other
ICW.
Yeah, some of the other deathmatch shows that I was into, because like it did all start to feel the same after a while.
Well, what happens is you get desensitized to the violence.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and when everything real quick, when everything looks similar, everything feels similar, and there's no emotional investment in it.
100% agree with you there. All right, next we have Kenny Omega defeating Takeshita for the AEW International Championship. This is almost 30 minutes. This was good shit. You know, I don't have quite the prejudice against Kenny Omega that Jim Cornette does. Kenny Omega has gotten less silly as time has gone on. He's one of the few in AEW that I think, you know, has actually matured in the company.
So yeah, this reminded me of Hangman and MJF from earlier in the show, and that they told a very cohesive story.
Yeah, I think,
and I think for that same reason, I found myself as invested in this match as I found myself invested in the opener, because Omega can get super fucking ridiculous at times. Don't get me wrong. Takeshita has gotten ridiculous at times in the past as well. However, when you have the background of the Don Callis being at ringside there, when you have the history that Omega and Takeshita have, going all the way back to when Takeshita was 15 in Japan, and Omega recognized that Konosuke was going to be one of the next big things in pro wrestling. It's an easy story to tell, and they didn't lay it on too thick. And then you obviously had the natural story too of Omega making his way back from diverticulitis, which is, anybody who's had stomach issues knows that shit could have ended his life, let alone his career.
Yeah, this was good. Like I said, I don't always love Kenny Omega stuff, and I definitely don't like him when he's a clown or when he's blowing himself up at Chinese New Year. But, you know, here when he's actually wrestling and taking it seriously and, you know, working with the guy he's working with, he can pull off some good stuff.
So I had Hangman versus MJF as my favorite match. This was my best rated match on the night. I had this match at 4.5 stars.
I'm curious, what's been the feedback online? You know, you're in the dirt sheets. What have people said about this match in particular?
Universally praised from everything I've read.
Yeah, I don't, you know, me. I'll go against the grain when I think it's necessary, but I'm with the masses on this one.
This is a situation of it. They didn't overstay their welcome. The match was 28 minutes, but it didn't feel 28 minutes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get you. All right, next match. Yeah.
The cage match.
Yes. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. Will Ospreay defeats Kyle Fletcher at, again, almost 30 minutes. Will Ospreay nearly killed himself doing a fucking, what was it?
Spanish fly.
Spanish fly off the goddamn cage. I mean, it was late in the night, and I was starting to lose it, you know, watching this thing. I was laying down in bed watching it. By this point, I'd moved out of the living room, and I was having a hard time staying with it. But what I saw was fucking violent. I know Will Ospreay had good reasons for turning down the WWE. Again, there's a lot of personal freedom in AEW, which he valued more than anything else, which is fine. But I think, Will Ospreay was one of those guys who, you remember this from when we did this initially. I would watch Will Ospreay matches wherever he was wrestling in the world. I always thought he turned in keen performances. This seemed unnecessary for a guy of Will Ospreay's talent. Like, other guys who kill themselves this way, I get it. You don't have to do this, sir. You are not ordinary. You are extraordinary. And this one kind of bothered me.
So, to my knowledge, this is Ospreay's first cage match.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they talked about that on the broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that this was Ospreay's first cage match, because Ospreay's offense doesn't lend itself to cage matches. Now, there were a couple of moments of adaptation which were very impressive. The Os cutter off the cage, I thought, was really fucking cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
When he pulled himself up onto the top of the cage and then sprung back into the Os cutter, I thought that was cool as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is an athlete such as Ospreay's caliber, even in a heated environment as he is with a former friend who betrayed him in Kyle Fletcher, you're taking away his best asset in his athleticism by putting him in a confined, restricted area.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't like cage matches in general, and this was kind of the going off of the thing that happened with Punk and Rollins at Raw on Monday night as well, the night after Revolution there. I had the same problem with Punk and Rollins that I had with Ospreay and Fletcher, in that it felt like a lot of the stuff was done just to get a reaction out of the crowd rather than actually meaning anything to the story of the match.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. All right, last match of the night.
I did like the finish. Real quick, I did like the finish, though. Right after the Spanish fly off the cage, and they're starting to make their way back up to the feet, and Kyle Fletcher just goes mental, swearing at Ospreay, and Ospreay shuts him up with the hidden blade before hitting the the Tiger Driver 91 for the finish.
All right, in our main event, we had Jon Moxley defeating Cope, formerly known as Edge. Christian Cage came in, cashed in his money in the bank, and Jon Moxley.
Legally nondescript championship contract, sir.
Sure, whatever. And then Christian Cage, in his only value to the company and anywhere else in the world, took a pin for Adam Copeland.
And Adam Cole, too.
Yes. Christian will always have work so long as they don't want to pin Edge. That's my only comment about this match.
Oh, that fucking sucked.
Yeah.
And I try to be positive on here. I am the voice of reason for a reason. But good God, that was everything it shouldn't have been. And especially at the end of a pay-per-view with the crowd already burnt out, you gave them nothing to care about.
My girlfriend was
the only time they really react.
It's funny. My girlfriend was asking me, why would anyone want to work for AEW? Why doesn't everyone want to work for WWE? And I said, prior to a few months ago, there was a sex pervert running it, and no one wanted to work with him anymore. She was like, "Oh, okay,
you rapist!
You rapist!" However, post sex pervert, I said there were just some people who the WWE doesn't even want back, and I'm going to go ahead, or their sell-by date is well past expired. Jon Moxley is one of those guys who, kind of like Adam Cole, has so devalued himself by this point. I don't even want to see a Shield reunion. It would be two stars and a homeless guy.
I will disagree with that. I think the problem with Moxley is he's involved in this Death Rider angle, which is just. And forgive me.
And prior to that, he was involved with a death match angle. It's just never Jon Moxley. I was explaining to my girlfriend that there are people who creative freedom is more important than anything else. And
Moxley's one of them.
Yeah, and AEW is one of those places where weirdo bohemians can paint freely and not have to worry about earning a living. I'm being metaphorical when I say that. And so
It felt like a Jeff Hardy joke.
At at this point, I don't even want to see Moxley back in the WWE. It's like for me, I'm saying this as a guy who I was once asked which one of the guys in the Shield do you think will be, world champion, and I said, Dean Ambrose, and I got argued with. It was like, no, Seth Rollins looks like he's going to be the guy that breaks out of the Shield and goes places. There was another argument for Roman Reigns, and I said, I think it'll be Dean Ambrose. All these years later, looking at what Dean Ambrose has done, not that he hasn't provided hours of entertainment, he has, sometimes unintentional comedy, but I just now I don't see Star and John Moxley anymore. I see Crash Test Dummy.
I think that this goes back to your statement earlier about the fact that sometimes creative freedom is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And if you believe the reports that came out, I don't know how true they are, that neither one of them wanted to lose, and that's why Christian got inserted into this match. That makes it even fucking dumber.
Who are you, Bret Hart? Jesus.
It's a situation of another WCW where the inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah. Look, I spent the day watching all these videos about Punk's time in AEW, and as Judge Radulich, I can kind of see Punk's point in some places, and other points I think Punk's being a dipshit. But the one line that I totally believe happened as he's telling the story, and I am in agreement with Punk, this is not how it should have been, was when he was dealing with Jungle Boy, and he looked at Tony and he was like, Tony, be a boss. If you don't, I will, and you're not going to like how I do it. And, say what you want about Vince McMahon, and this wasn't always the case, but it was more the case than not. At the end of the day, everyone knew Vince was boss. You rarely hear stories about people people left because there was no going against Vince once Vince had his mind made up.
Look at Shane.
Yeah, look at Shane.
The problem is, and I find myself saying that a lot tonight, and I think that's kind of the problem in and of itself when it comes to AEW, is that there's so many little things that you can nitpick there, but all of them trace back to one man. The problem is that Tony Khan is too concerned about being people's friend and not being their boss.
Yeah, I think that's the point that I was trying to get.
And I think that's why
Vince wasn't one of the boys. He wanted a good relationship with guys, but he wanted a good relationship with them so they could get him to do what he wanted.
And so that way they could make him as much money as he wanted them to make him.
Right.
The issue that I have here is that when it comes to somebody like Tony has final say over all the booking decisions in AEW, but Tony is trying to please so many different masters with that final say there. And it gets to the point where you need one final authority handling the book there. Otherwise, shit like this happens and everything gets convoluted.
Yeah. So overall, my thoughts on AEW Revolution are, it was okay. There's a lot of good, some not so good. But overall, my problems with AEW pay-per-views are, generally speaking, not the matches. It's that there's too much goddamn wrestling. I miss the 3-hour pay-per-view. I really do.
5.5 hours with the pre-show.
Yeah, and if you don't count the pre-show, it's still too long. Like, I think it ended somewhere between 12 and 1. I'm like, what the fuck is this? A UFC pay-per-view?
A little bit after midnight, 12:07 a.m. in the morning on Monday. Let's finish this up the same way I used to close the reaction on Mondays. Favorite match or moment from the show?
Favorite match was probably my favorite match was MJF and Paige, but favorite moment is anytime Okada hit the Rainmaker.
I'm gonna go with Hangman and MJF as well as my favorite match for the show, just because, like I said, their character, storytelling. Least favorite match or moment?
Anything having to do with the children and Orange Cassidy.
here nor there. I think my problem is the amount of people that were in title matches that had no realistic chance of winning said title matches.
I think it's a valid criticism.
Scale of 1 to 10, where would you put it?
6.5.
I'm a little bit higher at a 7.5. But I think a lot of that is on the basis that I judge based on in-ring content, and there were a lot of good matches. There was a lot of questionable decision-making, but there was a lot of good matches.
All right, that is our wrap-up here of the AEW Revolution show with some smatterings of WWE talk. We will be back
April 3rd, I think.
4th. We have Friday, April 4th. We'll be talking St. Louis Anarchy, Gateway to Anarchy 2025, and whatever else is happening between now and the next 3 weeks. This past week,
WrestleMania predictions there too, probably.
Yeah. Actually, it's now only Thursday morning. Ugh. But Monday, myself and Robert Winfrey talked Mickey 17. Last week, we reviewed Cobra Kai.
How was that?
I love it. Cobra Kai is a great show. The Bear season 2.
Mickey 17
sucked. And Alexis,
that's disappointing.
Jason, and Robert reviewed The Monkey. Tonight, depending on when you're reading this, listening to this, watching this. Oh God, I'm so tired. We'll be reviewing The West Wing season 3. Sunday, Jesse and I are going to review some comics. We've got Sons of Anarchy, Redwood Original. We're going to look at all 3 volumes of that. Monday, we're reviewing Novocaine. Tuesday, Alexis and who's he whatsy there? David did. Who are you again? Zachary Strobel. We'll be reviewing The Day the Earth Blew Up, which is the new Looney Tunes cartoon, which is getting a lot of praise. And then a week from tonight...
Is that the one that... Real quick, is that the one that got shelved by Max and is now finally getting released?
That's a different one, but yes. You're thinking of Acme versus Coyote, which is a whole different deal. But this was another one that was Warner Brothers had a hold of because they have the IP Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, and they let it go. Anyway, we're doing a series of triple features that are catching up on streaming movies. There were a bunch that came out between January and now. So this is our catch-up show. It'll be me, Mick Wanamaker, and hopefully Matt Kenter, and we'll be looking at Back in Action, You're Cordially Invited, and Kind of Pregnant. So I'm sure that'll be a hoot. Hey, Broadhurst.
Eva wants to see 2 of those. She wants to see Back in Action. That's the Cameron Diaz, Jamie Foxx one.
That's correct.
And she wants to see You're Cordially Invited, which is Reese Witherspoon and Will Ferrell.
Yeah, my girlfriend's a big Will Ferrell fan, so I'm going to watch that one with her. And I like me some Reese Witherspoon. She's a cutie patootie.
Sweet home Alabama.
Goddamn right. All right, folks. This has been the IndySiders. He's Big Sexy Harry Broadhurst. I'm the Heartbreak Kid, Sleepy Joe. Be well, be safe, and too sweet.
Ow!
Try that one more time.
I just threw up an ow. That's all.